Margaret, thank you so much for jumping on the AIM podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Let's go. This is gonna be a fun episode. Are you in Vegas right now?
Yeah, I'm in Vegas here. I'm leaving tomorrow. I had a quick trip that I have to make to Paso to pick up wine. And so I'm here for now, and then I'll be back in California over there for a day and then back over here. So
I
here for the
love it.
moment.
I love it. How hot is it in Vegas?
It's actually not that hot. I think today stayed under 100, which is untypical for Vegas.
Wow.
It's usually, I would say, I mean, last June we got really hot. It was like 115, 118 on the strip. This past month was pretty hot. July, August has been like pretty mild to say for Vegas. So I'm not complaining. If it's under 100, it's not bad, but the humidity is a little higher than we're used to, we'll say. So that's a different.
Yeah. You gotta stay hydrated. I know there's a lot of people sweat out there.
Yeah, and it's so hot. It's like dry heat. So as soon as you sweat, like it dries up. Versus if you're in Florida, you can feel the humidity, you can feel the sweat. Well, it's like you dry out here, and you're like, you don't even realize. But the people need more water, more salt. It definitely affects like training in terms of what you're doing. So
No doubt, no doubt. Have you had a chance to get a workout in today or stay a rest day?
yes, I did actually. So I've been doing I like to try to go to the gym and do classes with people. I love the community of CrossFit. I love the community that it brings together, the support, the camaraderie, but also the challenge to push one another. But that didn't happen today. So I have a garage gym that I got into. So I've been doing kind of weekly videos or daily videos on YouTube. So I'll do like a mobility, stretching, flexibility video at about 8 minutes. And then I actually did my own stuff. And then I hopped back on YouTube and did another live workout. So that was fun. It was good. It got me kind of out of this rut. I've been doing a lot of computer work for the business, a lot of stuff. So it was nice to actually peel myself out of my computer chair and actually move.
I love that. I love that. You're a beast. Obviously, you had a very successful career competing as an athlete, but it's so cool to see how you still incorporate that and how that's such a big staple of your life, regardless of if you're competing in the games or growing and running your businesses. It's really important.
Yeah, I agree. It is. It's unique because I think it's important to create it as a lifestyle piece. And that's what I try to showcase people, like creating a lifestyle with movement integrated as part of it is important, whether you're at a high level or, you're just starting.
No doubt. I couldn't agree more. We actually had a guy, Eric Hinman. I don't know. Do you know Eric?
Yep, I know, Eric. Yeah.
He's
Small world.
amazing. Yeah, small world. He came on the podcast and his whole thing was movement is medicine. And he really like went super deep into like the importance of movement. Not even
Mhm.
about like you don't have to be a bodybuilder, you don't have to be a CrossFit athlete. Like you can do whatever you want, but just moving your body and the benefits of that, not only physically, but mentally too. And it was super interesting. But you're totally right on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think people say, movement is therapy, movement is medicine, however you want to deem it. But I think movement, we were designed as humans to move, to function. And over the years, we've gotten very comfortable, we'll say, in inside buildings and not moving and taking elevators. And nothing's wrong with that in certain aspects when it's deemed for it. But movement is so beneficial for our body. And I think more for our mind and our spirit, the emotional aspect. And I think we've been very disconnected on that. And the intuition aspect has been very separated. So to be able to come back to the kind of roots of who we are is important, and just instilling that people. And I think it's hard because a lot of people may feel lost or unsure of where to start, or they see the CrossFit Games or they see the Olympics and like, oh, that's so far out of reach of where I'm at. I could never do that. And it's like, that's okay. We're not asking you to do that. We're just asking you to go for a walk or go for a hike or walk around the block with your dog. And I think it's just small steps every single day that eventually will lead you to those larger walks or hikes, or then eventually you're going to the gym.
It's so good. I couldn't agree more. Speaking of the games though, what was your just overall takeaway from this year's games? What did you think about it?
So I didn't get to watch everything, but from what I did see, it was unique. Obviously, it's different programming. I love Boz. I've worked with him on seminar staff for years, and a lot of it's interesting. I saw a quote by Dan Bailey in terms of, if you go back and read the level one manual, and a lot of what you saw at the games programming wise was exactly like that, right? You saw an element of the gymnastics component elevated, and of course, every year in the past, Dave would always test us as athletes in terms of pushing us to rise to that occasion or pushing us to challenge us to that next level. And of course, they continue to do so. So it's amazing. I've competed with a lot of these ladies over the years. And obviously seeing what Tia did in terms of, being a 6-time champion, that's incredible. That's phenomenal. That's a record in terms of how many championships or how many titles an individual has, male or female. And so it's cool. I think back to the first year we competed together in 2015. It was actually before the games. We were in San Diego, and I had purchased, when was that? I purchased a pig in 2016, but in 2015, someone had one and we were flipping it down there. So we were talking about D-balls, sandbags, pigs, and I don't think the pig had come out yet. It hadn't come out because I was 2015. So we were talking about like tires, actually. I think that's what we were talking about. But it was cool to be able to kind of reflect back and like, man, that was, I think 2015 was not that long ago, but dude, that was like 7 years ago. So it's cool to reflect back and like see how the games have transformed over the years. And a lot of younger athletes are coming up, 17, 16, 18, 19. And I mean, it's gonna change, it's gonna evolve as the more CrossFit is around, the younger these athletes or individuals are starting at a young age, and they're doing it just for fun or fundamentals. Some are maybe have the intention to actually compete in the future. So it's cool to see it evolve. It's constantly going to be dynamic, and in anything in life, there's change. And so we'll see change in all aspects within the competition, I think.
No doubt. What is your like position on when athletes should start participating in CrossFit? Like, do you think there's a certain age? Because like you said, it's crazy to see how young some of these athletes are getting into it and having so much success too.
Yeah, I feel like I wish I had CrossFit when I was younger, just to give me some proprioception, some kinesthetic awareness of who I am in my body and where I am in space. And I think I had a pretty decent amount of that as a kid, playing sports and doing activities. But I think, I've seen kids I used to coach CrossFit kids. And I worked with, one-on-ones, anywhere from, 3 to 5 year olds to, 15 to 16 year olds. So to have an individual come in and start to incorporate CrossFit into their training, I think it's great, because it feels like it will open up their barriers of what's the possibility for them in the future. On the same kind of other side of the coin of that, it's interesting because I remember talking to Rich, and Rich I think he was on a podcast. He was talking to some other friends about it, but kids say, I want to come in and I want to compete at the CrossFit Games, and they only want to do that, nothing else. And that's great. It's interesting because it's like, you will only be a kid once. You will only have that opportunity to, play sports in the school setting, depending on the school setting, because things are evolving and changing, obviously, as we speak. But kids should be kids because you only have that opportunity once. So it's up to the individual, it's up to the parents. And I think supporting the kid or your child in that is a huge endeavor. Having a supportive network and supportive environment is huge, whether you're a teen or not, or a young kid. So I think it's up to the person and what they want to do. And I think it's inspiring to see young kids that want to be in the gym and want to be active, especially when we see a huge population these days with, obesity or overweight, or kids being inactive. And I remember hearing, this was years ago, but I remember hearing that PE was no longer a requirement. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, we had it in junior high, we had it at least the first 2 years in high school. And then from after that, we could elect to take it as elective our junior or senior year. And I think it's huge for kids wanting to be active and being in the gym, especially if they have their parents or friends as, mentors to be active and move. As, like I said, especially with what's going on now. So I know it kind of doesn't like hit the nail on the hammer in terms of the answer, but I think kids have a great opportunity to learn more about their body and how they move.
No, I agree. And I think that the piece to me that's striking is, obviously, as kids, obviously some kids don't want to play sports, and that's okay. But I do agree or believe that no matter who you are, what you look like, where you come from, everyone should have some degree of health and fitness and training in their life to some degree, obviously just for pure health reasons. But the cool part about CrossFit is you get exposed to such a wide variety of modalities: biking, swimming, running, lifting, gymnastics. Like you get to see pretty much everything in fitness. And so maybe you don't turn out to be a CrossFit Games champion, but maybe that unlocks the door for you to become a really good swimmer. And that's what you fall in love with. But it kind of at least gives you that exposure to kind of see what's out there, which I think is really important for young people.
No, I agree. And I think that's something important, because I've talked to some friends about this. I've talked to Alex about this, about you look at, kind of where we're at now with CrossFit and weightlifting. You go back to like 2008, 2009, 2010, and there weren't that many people weightlifting, specifically women. And it's like, you can't weightlift, like, you're a woman, like no one really weightlifts. And it's like, that was kind of not necessarily shunned, but it wasn't highlighted. But it's like, over time and over the years, it evolved to more and more women weightlifting, or becoming aware of weightlifting, the snatch, the clean and jerk with CrossFit. But then the growth within the weightlifting world exploded, not just with the women, but men as well. And I think it's huge, because you learn so much not only in the physical realm, but about, consistency, about patience, about being able to execute, about timing and precision. Yes, it's a physical movement, but that transfers over to a lot of things in life. And at least I found that for myself when I started to weightlift. It was a horrible, like I was so bad. I could barely snatch, and I would have, like temper tantrums because I was so frustrated I couldn't do it. And people were like, really? I'm like, yeah. But I had to work through that internally and mentally, like not give so much value or weight. So like, oh my God, I can't snatch 95 pounds. It's like, I will get there. And the same thing applies to everything else in terms of where we're at. Like we will get there. It just takes
So good.
time, consistency, and patience, and a couple other things, obviously.
That's so good. And it's, gosh, that's so good. I mean, it applies directly to a lot of the things I feel like people deal with now in this age with instant access to any information or anything they want. It's like, no, some things take time. Sometimes you have to dial it back and say, I'm going to actually take something on. That's a challenge that doesn't come supernatural, easy to me. And I'm going to slowly strategize and execute day in and day out and build a body of work that's going to allow me to be, and get to where I want to go. And I think it's so good. And that's another really cool application of getting young people into some sort of training like this, because there are going to be things that come at them that they're not going to probably be naturally good at. And like you're saying, it's such a direct correlation and parallel to so many different things.
I agree. And that was something when I learned, like I didn't have an extensive background in, I mean, the only really sports I played in high school were volleyball and golf. And there can be some parallels between golf and the snatch, or golf and weightlifting with the first and second pull. But I had to be very patient. And that was where my mantra kind of came out of, where it's like, you have to be accountable to your goal. You have to prepare and execute. You need to review your work, see what's working, what's not working. You need to be patient. I mean, you don't need to, but patience is part of the process. And you have to enjoy the journey because you are spending so much more time there. And I think it's important for young people and just people in general to realize that we spend the meat and potatoes of our time in that journey. And if we don't enjoy it, and if we don't have some sort of excitement of the process, then by the time you stand on the podium, or by the time you get your degree, or by the time you get that promotion, it's going to have this empty feeling left in you. You're like, all right, I achieved that, but I feel like I didn't really make the most of it. So it's like falling in love with the process is important. I think that the time that we spend there, as much as it's hard work and it's grinding and we got to get our hands dirty and have boots on the ground, that's going to make it so much more rewarding.
I love that. And actually that brings up a question I have for you that I think is pretty interesting. So you talk about loving the process. Obviously, CrossFit is such a unique sport in the fact that, like, as you're preparing for the games, and I want to hear your perspective on this, as you're preparing for the games, you're trying to, like, obviously, strengthen weaknesses, obviously continue to strengthen things you're good at, but also like kind of just prepare for what might come in these workouts at the games. What is that process like, preparing for an event that you don't truly know what it's going to look like?
I mean, you have to kind of let go of that control aspect and think like, oh, I know what's going to happen. You can have speculation, but you have to train as much variety as possible, but then also change that variety up. So it's like, hey, I think we're going to have like a heavy lift, and then we're going to have to go for a run. Well, maybe they go make us run, then we have to go for a heavy lift. So it's like literally throwing any rules or barriers that you think you have that will guide you. You have to kind of put them to the wayside, because it's like a hopper in the sense where you don't know what's going to come out. You don't know if they're going to repeat a workout. You don't know what they're going to change. And as an athlete, you have to constantly be pushing, or I mean, as an athlete, you have to constantly be pushing yourself and challenge yourself. But as a coach, you also need to be able to sit back and say, hey, what do I need to do to be able to change their stimulus as much as I can, so they are as prepared as possible. And for me, it's like that unknown, unknowable. Like I've been training for that for years, like competing, like didn't know what was going to come at. We have an idea what would come at the open, have an idea what would come at regionals, but at the games, it's like, all right, well, we know there could be a little bit of everything, but there's gonna be these new implements, the pig, the snail, the sled. Like you don't know what's going to happen. The huge Zeus rig with like 20-foot ropes. Like you don't know, so you literally have to be like, all right, whatever I'm comfortable with, throw that in the garbage can, and be ready for something new.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there one workout or event that just like you absolutely love throughout your time in the games that sticks out to you more than any other?
There's a couple. So I loved in 2015, there's a couple in 2015 that I really loved. It was the berm run. So we had to run up and over the stadium in the soccer stadium. And then we had the yoke carry. I believe it was 50 feet, but we had to do that for 6 rounds.
Wow.
And that was, yeah, it was rough. And I was living in El Paso at the time. And so I would run sand dunes every Sunday. Some friends and I would get together from the gym, we'd go run sand dunes. And that was like perfect training, not knowing, but it implemented that like great. And of course, you don't always have like exact scenario, but the running and the climbing was huge. That was one of my favorite workouts. Another one was the pegboard, because that's exactly what we train for. We don't know what's coming, and then it comes out and it's like there's similar movements, right? You got to have good core strength, good upper body, good ability to shift from side to side. And that was released. It was like, oh crap. But it was good. And it's funny because a side story about that, the gym that I was at in El Paso, they had just installed a pegboard. I was like, oh man, I should try this. Like, I've never done a pegboard. Like, and my coach was like, no, 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 we have more important things to like train, which was like handstand push-ups and handstand walking, which I agree. Those are definitely strict deficit handstand push-ups were like my nemesis. And so it was more adequately calculated to put more time into that. But then when it was revealed, I was like, oh, I should have tried it. But it worked out in my favor because my training, I was well prepared. My coach had great programming. I was doing a lot of different things, and that got me prepared for that. So those were kind of two of the workouts that I enjoyed from that year. A handful of others as well, but I could talk about a lot of different ones on a ramble.
No, I bet when you were in the heat of training for like your competitive career in CrossFit, did you seek out a lot of other athletes to train with, or did you prefer kind of training, kind of getting in your own lane and really locking in? That's something I guess people do it differently, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's interesting because some people would like to train with other individuals and athletes to push themselves. And if I had the opportunity to do that, then I would do that. The biggest thing would be, all right, where do I need to travel to? I have to like, it's an additional cost, right? Whether it's a hotel or travel, what's the accessibility of the gym that I'm going to? Am I going to a place where we have all open hours, or are we limited by classes in the community? So that would be the difficult kind of planning. So it just depended. Some years I had the opportunity to meet up with people. Other times I had people come to me. Other times I would just stay where I was at and do as much as I can. We would try to mimic getting closer to regionals. We would try to mimic and simulate regionals with either other competitors or other athletes that my coach was working with. And it was great because it gives that simulation of, competing against someone else. But when it comes down to it, like you can be aware of your surroundings, but at the same time, you need to be able to know what you are capable of and what you control. If you're basing your decision on how you're going to do a workout compared to the athlete next to you, then you're putting, your faith or your focus on someone else when it should be on yourself. And I think in the beginning of my career, it was like blinders. It was like, hey, I need to do what I need to do because I'm a younger athlete, younger in the sense of not that much time under my belt competing, especially in like 2012 and 2013 and 14, where I'm newer. I'm trying to figure out how I can, manage these workouts, but also what my capacity is, push myself, challenge myself where I am compared to them. But it was ultimately my control. But as I got more seasons, as the years went on, I could take those blinders off. Like, all right, do I need to execute faster? Do I need to not be as conservative here because XYZ person's in front of me? And if I get in front of them, that allows me to jump points. So I think that comes with time and experience. And you're able to use that to your advantage as you get more seasoned, we'll say, not older necessarily.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's crazy again, like another kind of thing we've seen as the sport has become more popular and grown. Like some of these athletes, like Rich is obviously a great example. Like he's building a whole like powerhouse in Cookeville, Tennessee. Like people are moving there to train and be in that environment. So I was curious how that whole dynamic worked. And I'm sure, like you said, everyone does it a little bit differently, but it's interesting to see how some people are kind of doing that.
It is. And I think depending on our situation, I know a lot of people did move to Cookeville over the years to be able to be there. And I mean, and I read Rich's book. So it's like, it's interesting because I find like, Rich wasn't just as like individual that came up and like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, won the games consistent. Like I love Rich. He's awesome. But he was doing a lot of stuff in his younger years that his dad would put him through, like, hey, move bricks from one side of the barn to the other. When you're done, do it again. It's like, well, what's the purpose of this? And it's funny, just like I think of that, I'm like, man, like he's been doing this for years, but his work ethic and his focus is exactly what he needs to do. And people want to be around that because then again, that environment that you're around will elevate you. And I've been around individuals and environments where it is not conducive to growth. It can actually pull away from yourself because it's a toxic environment. And you have to remove yourself, or you need to remove the people that are creating that toxic environment. So when you're going to a place that's, positive and supportive and it's going to elevate you, then that makes, and obviously if the focus is all training, you have nothing else to focus on, then that makes it all easier to do what you need to do. But being around people that are better than you, that's going to elevate yourself. Like if you're the best person in the room, maybe need to change that. And I think that's where, some people are like, oh, I'm the big fish in the small pond. They don't say that, but it's like, you constantly need to be challenging yourself. You constantly need to be like rising yourself to the next level, whether that be in fitness, competition, business, education, whatever it might be. And it's hard because our egos as humans and individuals, it's like, oh man, like you have to remove that and put it to the side. And a lot of CrossFit gyms, we, at least back in the day, I haven't seen it recently, but it's like you leave your ego at the door. But the mentality is like, whatever you think you have going on in your head, like let go of that and focus on what's important here. It's like if you need to grow and you need to push yourself and you need to adapt, then you need to be pliable. And if you're stuck in a certain way and you're like, nope, only this, then that's going to be detrimental because it won't allow you for growth. And change is guaranteed in life in all aspects. So it's how do you manage that change? How do you react to that? And something I've learned with business, specifically in launching my businesses and building my businesses and constantly trying to be dynamic and innovative, is that you don't have to, but I've learned to embrace the struggles. And how do I respond to those struggles? How do I respond to those hardships? Because doing so will allow me to set me up for success down the road when I have a similar hardship or I have a similar trouble. And when those successes come, embrace them, celebrate them, because they become few and far between, especially in competition, especially in business. It's like for every yes you may get, you might have had like 20 no's before that. And for me, it's been a huge learning experience. And I tell people, because I've had people ask me like, oh man, what's harder, like competing at the CrossFit Games or starting and running a small business? And when I first started, I was like, I don't know, man, like they're both kind of tough. And as I've gotten into it, I'm like, hands down, starting a business and running a small business is very difficult because the amount of competition, the amount of things that are in your hands and no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And there can be parallels, and there are parallels to training in the CrossFit Games and to competing in that. But as I've learned over the years, and of course, industry's different. Like the wine industry is very difficult. It's very saturated. There are a lot of things that you don't really learn until you get into it, which is how I learned. But there are challenges and everything's different. But for me, it's been eye-opening. But I think that for me, I can at least share and showcase like, hey, like what you're going through here, like you'll make it through it in terms of what's important or what's challenging. You will get to the other side, but embrace that struggle and celebrate the success.
Dang, that's awesome. I love that. I want to
I know it
talk.
was a lot at once.
No, that was a perfect tee up for this kind of next part. Like I do want to talk about that because it's super important. I think a lot of people can get a ton of value from this. So as you make your transition out of competing professionally in CrossFit, what did that look like for you? I know you touched on the wine business, but like what was that transition like, and kind of how did you go about it?
Yeah, so I knew I wasn't going to compete as an athlete forever. I knew my time as an athlete was going to be limited, it was going to be finite, and I'd done home production wine for a couple of years, just with my family, and I enjoyed the process. And with Alex, I loved that it mirrored a lot of things in life. You spend a lot of time in the process and the journey, like I talked about earlier. And so I started to think, all right, well, what's the best way, start a business if I want to do this? Like I love wine, I love winemaking, I love that it mirrors a lot of things in fitness. If I can blend the two together and put that as a business and showcase to people, that'd be great. But I was like, I didn't really know necessarily the first start to step. So I started to kind of research and look into it in end of 2015, early 2016. And in doing so, I found that it was going to take a lengthy process because it's alcohol, because it's wine. So I thought, all right, well, I'll continue to compete and do this on the side, so that I can eventually, launch my company. And it was definitely, there's a long, like tiered process because it's, paperwork and application and doing all that. But in doing so, I thought if I can focus on the games and compete, and then as soon as the games are finished, I can go work on the harvest aspect, work on transporting grapes to get the custom crush agreement set up and all the legalities, and it should work. And so it was kind of small steps at once, figuring out, all right, what am I going to do with the grapes? I'm going to take them to the custom crush facility in California. I'm going to do that. Once I finish that step, then I'm going to go to step 2, which was of doing all the paperwork. And that took like, I can't remember, 8, 9, 10 months. Wow. It's a process. So it took about 5.5 to 6 months to get the license. But in doing so, that was like phase 2 of that. I had to go back again, still trying to compete, still trying to make sure that I'm in the gym focusing. And it was hard because I could physically be in the gym, but my mind was like, no, I have paperwork I need to do. I need to get these notarized documents so I can send them off so I can get the approval for the license. Then when I was doing that, I was like, man, I need to be back in the gym and finishing my accessory work. So it was a mental battle more than it was a physical, I think, for a period of time. But that transition was hard because I saw myself as an athlete, as a coach, doing some of our staff's training and traveling on the weekends when I had time, when I wasn't in competition mode. But then once competition season came, making sure that I had every ounce of time dedicated towards that, but at the same time still trying to juggle and making sure I got paperwork done. So in the beginning it was rough because there was a lot of kind of billiard ball moments in the aspect where like I'm kind of going around in different like angles and different positions to get what I needed to be done. But in doing so, that set me up for, making sure that come 2017, I can apply for my license, wait for my license, compete for regionals. And then as soon as I competed for regionals, I got the approval for my license. And then it was like, now I need to shift mindset where I need to get my bottles, I need to get my production all set up, but I still need to be ready to compete for the games. And so that transition period, that first year and a half was very difficult mentally because I wanted to be in the gym. I needed to be in the gym, but then I also needed to be at the computer. I need to be working on paperwork and details to make sure that I had the license. I need to make sure I was ordering all the materials to have that ready for production. And at the same time, I want to launch the CrossFit Games. So I need to get a distributor. I need to have a booth. I need to be able to have everything set up. And to say it was kind of a shit show is probably an understatement. And I don't think I really realized that until probably way after, because I looked at a picture of the games from 2017 that I was like, man, I would go to an event, go to the booth, go to an event, go as and compete at an event, go to the booth. Oh, and then Thursday after our first event, we had a wine tasting, a wine launch, sold it out, which was amazing, but had to be there. Then I had to get up the next day and be ready for, the next event. And then trying to ping pong back and forth between competition. But it's like, I made that bed. I need to sleep in it now. But I think I want to share that with people because I want to show the reality of you can do both, but it's very difficult. It's not ideal. And so you're asking again, I kind of went away from the question, how did I transition? And it was tough because it was a lot of back and forth. But once I launched the business, it was this teeter-tottering of balance of time. And so I had to be really good with time management to still be in the time in the gym to compete and then still be able to launch my business. And I was able to do that for, 16, 17, come around to 18. And after 18, I was like, man, this is getting a little harder to manage because the business is growing. I'm able to get into distribution. I was able to make changes and move to Las Vegas to get here into distribution. But if I also wanted more growth and more sales, I need to spend more time on that because you could have great wine, but if no one tastes it, how are you going to sell it? So again, it was a hard transition because I was trying to do both, but I knew that I love fitness. I love competing, but I also loved being able to share my passion for fitness and wine. And I wanted to reach more people in that avenue. And that allowed me to do that with the business. And so that was a slow transition and ended up going from individual competition to team because I still loved competing. I still loved being around people and challenging myself, but I couldn't commit as many hours as individual compared to team. Don't get me wrong. Team is still challenging and hard and requires a lot of work, but I was able to manage that a little bit more than individual. And after 2019, I was like, all right, like I want to spend more time with the business and I want to grow and have this flourish more. So I decided, not to focus so much on competition and more in the business. And that was good because mentally that clarity was there. And mentally I was like, I wasn't kind of hurting myself in the sense where like, oh man, like I'm beating myself up about not being in the gym or not getting my workout in, or not getting my training in, where it was a little more balanced in my mind. And I think that helped in a lot of aspects. So I know that was a long answer to your question.
No, it's super interesting and honestly so impressive that I didn't realize when you started going. I didn't know it had been that long of a process, and the fact that you were able to build that company and that brand and just figure everything out, like you're saying, while still competing at such a high level is just like, it's so impressive.
Thanks. And I think it's tough because I tell people, like give yourself that pat on the back, like celebrate those successes. And I think
Sure.
I need to take my own advice at times. So it's like, no, better. I got to be perfect. I got to have, straight A's. I got to be the best. I got to make sure I'm doing both. And it's sometimes like, man, like take a step back to look and see how far you've come, like tell your story and showcase that because people won't know if I don't talk about it. And it's hard because that ego piece, like, I don't want to feel like, oh, it's all about me. Look at me. And I know it's not that, but it's hard when I want to help others. And for me to help others, I need to be able to help myself so that I can have the ability to share my story and hopefully inspire and help others out there as well.
That's facts. No, that's really good. I love that. Where did the name come from? Like, how did you come up with the name GOAT? What's the story there?
So we had multiple labels, and one of the labels was going to be the fourth one, and we were trying to figure out what do we want to be, and we were talking about this was in 2016, so the popular term GOAT was kind of out there. People, golf had it trademarked with Tiger Woods. People were talking about Rich being the goat, the greatest of all time. And so we're thinking, all right, well, if we could have a goat wine, that'd be kind of cool, be kind of unique and different. And the original label we had was more of like a caricature, kind of a painting, and it was a little more fun. But unfortunately, it was trademarked, so we couldn't use that. So we found another image, and it actually worked out great because it was licking its lips. I'm like, well, that's good because it's a goat, so it's a picture of a goat, but also has the dual symbol of greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And when I tell people, it's funny because there's some people that are like, "What's GOAT stand for?" I'm like, "Oh, greatest of all time." They're like, "Oh," it's like this light bulb goes on. That's cool. And other people are like, "Oh man, I love what it means." It's cool because you'd hit kind of two different markets.
Yeah.
The younger generation that knew what it was, and older generation that didn't. But for me, it was unique because it was multifaceted. It wasn't just sport, even though it was
Mm.
CrossFit and fitness. It was multi-dimensional. Where it's like maybe it's the goat in your life, maybe it's a grandmother that helped raise you, maybe it was a friend or a business partner that helped mentor you through a hard time or helped you get through a struggle in the family. And so for me, it was like that goat could be anyone in your life.
That's so cool. I love that story.
Thanks.
It's such an awesome story. You kind of touched on some of the challenges that you faced, obviously just getting into this business world and trying to learn so many things. And obviously I'm sure there was just a huge time constraint of just having to get it all done. But what were some of the benefits or values that kind of came with this process from your platform as being an athlete transitioning? So I'm sure there were some places where it probably helped that, you had the platform you did, or you
For
that.
sure. Yeah, I mean the community and the reach within the CrossFit realm was definitely great in terms of launching the business, as there was huge interest. People were very supportive in that matter, which was great. And for me, like when I got into distribution in Vegas, the distributor was a CrossFit coach, or is a CrossFit coach. But he told me, he's like, the only reason I'm bringing you in is because of who you are. Like, you're Margaux Alvarez, you've competed at the games 6 years, and this was back in 2018. And I was like, and it kind of put perspectives. It's like if I was just somebody else bringing a wine in, he'd be like, "Nope, not going to happen." So I was very grateful and thankful for obviously everything that I put in, like all the hard work that I put in over the years to compete and be at that level. It was kind of like, all right, like this is not that it's paying off or something, but it was the goals that I had personally, but it also helped in terms of business, in terms of reach, in terms of the community and the support. And I'm eternally grateful for everyone that's been so supportive over the years. And that was a huge kind of value that I learned. And it's something I've always instilled with CrossFit. It's like the community and the camaraderie is why I got into it. And that's why I continue to love and support people in the community, because they've been so supportive myself, but it's something you don't necessarily find everywhere. And when you do find it, it's a way to embrace, and it's a way to surround yourself with. And so that was a value that I learned a lot of within the fitness realm and within the CrossFit realm that transferred over to business. And it's interesting because some people in the business realm, specifically the wine industry, they don't, fitness is probably the farthest thing from their mind. So they thought fitness and wine, like those don't go together. But when I tried to explain it, or when I did explain it to them, they kind of saw like, all right, this is unique, it's different. And I think for them as a business, bringing in another wine label, they want different, they want unique, because that's what's going to sell. They want us to be able to see the product move off their shelves. So it's, again, I want to create this symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship with the wine stores or the wine shops. And just like the community in CrossFit, I want to create a community that's blending fitness and wine together, that's helping small businesses and help elevate one another.
That's super cool. I love, you have some really cool merch that you've put out where it shows kind of like the lifting during the day, the wine at night. And
Yeah.
I just think it's cool. I think it's awesome.
Yeah. The AM, midday, PM. It's
Yeah, exactly.
all about the lifestyle.
Hey, that's right. I mean, I think that's another good team. You're teaching balance. You're advocating for like living a good life, and it doesn't have to be, tunnel vision on one thing. Like there's a lot of things that go into life, and enjoying it, I think, is important. So that's cool that you're doing that through the brand.
Thank you. I think I've learned over the years that we aren't guaranteed, next month, next day, next week. And I think it's very important to embrace and make the most of every single moment you have, because, we're not going to be 100% sure if that next day is our last day. And I think for me, if I can share that and showcase that in my messaging, in my branding, through whether it's through apparel, through it's my wine stories, through my labels, whatever it might be, I think it's important. And I think we all have our own personal stories. We've all had our own personal hardships, and we can connect in that, and share stories and share memories, but also help uplift people that maybe are currently going through that, to help them through a period of time that maybe they're struggling and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully give them some inspiration for that.
That is so powerful. I love that. It's so good. I want to touch on the stuff that you've been doing recently. Obviously, the wine's a big piece of what you're doing, but you've also been doing a lot of cool stuff with guns, and I think it's so cool to see that. So yeah, how did that even start? Is that something you grew up doing, or is it more of a recent hobby? And talk a little bit about some of the cool events you've been doing recently.
Yeah, so I would say it's a little more recent. I grew up in Montana, and the most I loved outdoors. It's always I've connected with it, but the most I ever did was like fishing. So I didn't do much hunting, didn't do much any of the camping outdoors, but I loved it. So I would say probably in the last like couple of years it's becoming a little bit more of a focus, and I absolutely love it. I think being able to educate yourself and give yourself the tools to understand what you need to do to be not only prepared is important. And so for me, it's been huge learning, a little bit more about, rifles and pistols and educating myself. Excuse me. I got my CCW in 2020. I think a lot of people, there was a huge increase in gun sales. I think safety was a big concern for a lot of people. And for myself, it's like, all right, you never know how people are going to react. And so I got my CCW and I loved it because it's education, teaching myself to be prepared. Like, how do I handle a weapon? How do I handle a pistol or a rifle or a shotgun? And I have absolutely loved it. There's a great community within the gun community. I think I'm just barely scratching the surface with it. So it's been really cool. I had the opportunity to go to the SIG Hunter Games in, excuse me, in June. And that was phenomenal. It was it's kind of a simulation of going on a hunt where you have to hike from one position to the next position. You have X amount of time, and then you have X amount of time to shoot while you're there. And I was a part of the team of all 4 ladies. So it was
Wow.
4 ladies plus our RO, so 5 of us. And that was a really cool opportunity and experience to get to do that. And that just brought me more awareness to the hunting community, the gun community. And I was blown away. Everyone's so supportive, they're so knowledgeable and very uplifting of one another. And it reminded me a lot of the CrossFit community because people are very supportive of one another. And I love that. That led to the opportunity to go out to Sig Sauer's grand opening in July. And that was amazing, getting to meet, obviously, a lot of the staff with Sig, knowing them from the previous month, getting to meet the CEO, getting to meet the marketing team and talk to them about what they're doing. I mean, the female market is the fastest growing market within the gun community.
Wow.
There are a lot more women that are looking to learn how to shoot, especially concealed carry, learning how to understand how to protect yourself. And know how to handle a weapon or know how to handle a pistol and be understanding of that. And so there's a lot more things that I want to do with them. I'd love to work more with Lena, who is their part of their SIG team in terms of the shooting. She's a phenomenal shooter. And I'm looking forward to doing more. I'd like to eventually get into the tactical games. I definitely need more practice on the, dry fire and the pistol and rifle shooting, but the fitness is there. Just, keep the cobwebs on, work on more of the shooting. And I absolutely love it. So I think a lot more people, specifically women, like I said, are interested. And I think it's, again, just education and understanding what you need to learn or how to learn it and become, an open mind with it.
I couldn't agree more. And I think to me, that's the most frustrating part. I think and not to get super deep into this, but just like, I think there's there's a massive population or percentage of the population that is misinformed and uneducated on that resource. And they just don't know how it works, how the safety measures or, what it truly is supposed to be intended to do. And I think that's where there's a huge disconnect and it causes so much division. I think if we could be more transparent and educational in that way, I think it could help a lot of people understand the power of how it can be used for good and how it has to be taken seriously. It's a very serious thing, but can also be something that's very helpful and a big part of, our rights as American citizens.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I think the education piece is huge. I think there is a huge disconnect. And I think there is division on a purpose, on a reason. They're trying to create division for whatever reason they are. And it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people out there are like, oh my gosh, guns are bad. And it's like, how the messaging is coming across, there is a disconnect there as well. And I think for myself, it's like, I think there's a lot of benefit to understanding how to operate. Like, I mean, there's so many things that I don't know. Like, I mean, I can change my oil on a truck, right? On my car, but like, what if something happens where like wiring goes out? Or what if, I know how to change a tire too, but like, there's so much more that I don't know about a car that I go to a car mechanic to do. And if I could do it myself, I'd be more informed. I know it's not necessarily a parallel to gun, but learning how to clean your rifle, learning how to clean your pistol, learning how to take it apart. I've done that a little bit more now. So I become more familiar with it and knowing that, yes, there are safety measures and you need to abide by those, and you need to be smart. You always need to approach the gun as if it was loaded. You always need to make sure that your finger's off the trigger, and you never intend to point it at someone unless if you're obviously life's in harm, or you have it downrange and you're shooting and you're focusing on that. And there's all these safety measures that for sure need to be in place. But if you open the door, if you have an open mind, says like, hey, let's teach this, let's educate each other and oneself, or take classes, I think it's huge. And for me, it's like, I'm constantly trying to learn. Like the more I learn, the better I'm going to be as an individual. And then hopefully in turn, I can help others. And I think it's really important that people understand, or at least have an opening mindset to understand and say, hey, like there is good intention, and you can understand how to operate a pistol, a rifle, a shotgun, whatever implement you might be using, and use it for protection, and use it for, shooting, whatever it might be. And I think people get caught up. And of course, there's lots of different tangents we can go down, lots of different rabbit holes, but media doesn't help too if there's certain agendas that are being pushed. And I think it's really important. Again, let's peel that back. Let's talk about the education piece and have an open mindset to it, and have a discussion. Discussion's the biggest part.
No doubt. It's so good. I don't even have anything else to say more on that. I completely agree. But no, I'm glad you touched on the tactical games, because that was something I was going to ask when your debut is coming out. Because I feel like you'd be perfect for it. I feel like that would be like go right into what you're doing right now. For
sure. I definitely, I'm looking to do hopefully maybe early 2023. Trying to make sure that I have the right pistol and rifle. And from the videos I've seen, it looks like I need to get like a 320. I'm looking at the Sig Sauer 320. I have a 365 XL and I love it, but I think I need a little bit more for the pistols. And the rifle, I have a carbine, but I don't need, if I need something specific. I've seen some people have scopes. I have a red dot, and I'm like, well, is the scope going to be better than the red dot? Again, there's a lot of questions that I'm trying to figure out and trying to navigate. So more dry fire practice, but I think it'd be good because my focus is, and after spending time at the Hunter Games, like I've never gone hunting, like a legit hunt. So I want to go on a hunt. I want to spend more time outdoors. I'm from Montana. I love the mountains, and I want to be able to showcase that people and share with others, just like I've done the wine. And so preparation is important. How can you get ready for survival? And that survival, obviously there's sliding scales of it, but I think it's important that people start to focus on that. At least that's what I want to try to do. So I want to put together, I know we talked a little about this, but I want to put together a fitness program that is focused on preparation, enduring the outdoors, and survival. And the survival aspect is going to be kind of a little bit of everything. And I'm going to be working with a friend of mine, Laura Zara. She's a huge outdoor survivalist, mountaineering. She's done Naked and Afraid for 5 seasons.
Wow.
She knows her stuff, and she's a very humble, down to earth, super funny, super crazy gal. She was on my team at Hunter Games, but we're going to work together in terms of bringing some more of the survival aspect of, how to find shelter or how to start a fire. And she's done these over the years with different people in like privates and, public events. I did one with her back in early 2021 with like an all ladies group, and that was phenomenal. So I think showcasing people and saying, hey, what are you doing inside the gym that can take that and physically apply it to outside, but also add in elements that can give you education pieces so that you can use that as well. So that'll be coming down the pipeline.
Let's go. Well, keep me posted, because I'm interested in that, and that's super cool. We'll have to go on a hunt sometime. I'd love to do that too.
Yes. Have you gone hunting?
So I haven't. So playing college basketball, I spent my whole entire life up to 22 playing. It was basketball is everything for me. And so obviously during the winter, I couldn't go deer hunting, couldn't really hunt outside of season. So now I've got the flexibility and freedom, but now I do enjoy shooting. I carry a SIG P365 too. So it's a good one. But yeah, no, let's do that. And this has been a really fun episode. So I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing so much wisdom and value. And I just appreciate who you are and how you're leading by an example and doing some really cool things.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. This was a fun conversation.
Let's go. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you.